Have you ever taken a cutting from a plant you really wanted to save? Maybe a rose from a bouquet, a piece of pothos from a friend, or a branch from a favorite hydrangea. Put it in water and waited for roots, only to watch the stem turn black, the water get cloudy, and the whole thing start to rot? It is frustrating. And after it happens a few times, a lot of people start thinking, maybe I am just bad at propagating plants. Maybe I do not have the magic touch. But the truth is, rooting cuttings is not magic. It is biology. And once you understand what a cutting actually needs, you can give it a much better chance to survive. Today, I want to show you a simple rooting method inspired by old gardeners' tricks, including the use of willow water, honey, and a mild plant energy booster. You do not need an expensive rooting setup. You do not need a shelf full of chemicals, and you definitely do not need to keep throwing failed cuttings in the trash. Now, before we mix anything, let's talk about why cuttings often fail in plain tap water. When you cut a stem, you are creating an open wound. That plant no longer has roots to bring in moisture, and the cut end is exposed. It is stressed, vulnerable, and wide open to bacteria and fungus. In many parts of the United States, tap water is treated with chlorine or chloramine. That is good for keeping drinking water safe, but it is not always ideal for delicate plant tissue. On top of that, if your jar is dirty, your scissors are dull, or the water gets warm in a sunny window, bacteria can multiply fast. So instead of using its energy to grow roots, the cutting starts fighting rot. That is why this method works better than simply dropping a stem into a glass of water and hoping for the best. We are going to do 3 things. First, we protect the cut from bacteria and fungus. Second, we encourage the plant to begin healing and forming root tissue. Third, we give the cutting enough support to get through the stress period. The first ingredient is raw honey. And yes, it really does matter what kind. Use raw, unpasteurized honey if you can. The heavily processed honey from a squeeze bottle at the grocery store is not the same. Raw honey has natural antibacterial properties, and it can help create a gentle protective coating around the cut end of the stem. Honey also contains simple sugars, which can give the cutting a small boost when it has no roots and very limited ability to feed itself. Do not overdo it. More honey does not mean better results. Too much can make the water sticky and heavy, and that can actually make things worse. Use 1 teaspoon of raw honey in about 6 cups of clean, room-temperature water. That is a little less than half a gallon. The water should not be hot. Warm water can damage delicate plant tissue, and very hot water can destroy the good properties we want from the honey. If you are using tap water, let it sit out overnight first. If your city uses chloramine, which does not evaporate as easily as chlorine, filtered water or spring water is a better choice. The second ingredient is willow water. This is one of the oldest propagation tricks in gardening. Willow trees root incredibly easily. If you stick a fresh willow twig into damp soil, it often starts growing. That is because willow contains natural compounds that can support rooting and plant recovery. To make willow water, take a few young willow branches, ideally the flexible green or yellowish new growth. Cut them into small pieces, about 1 to 2 inches long. Put them in a jar, pour hot water over them, and let them steep overnight. By the next day, you will have a simple, homemade willow tea. Strain it and use the liquid in your rooting mix. If you do not have willow nearby, do not panic. You can still root cuttings without it. In the United States, you may also find willow extract or rooting products at garden centers. But for this recipe, natural willow water is the traditional option. I would not recommend guessing with strong chemical substitutes unless you know exactly what you are using. Young cuttings are easy to damage. Gentle is better. The third ingredient is succinic acid. This is not a fertilizer in the normal sense. It does not feed the plant like nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. Think of it more like a stress support. It helps plants recover and can encourage stronger cell activity during difficult moments, such as transplant shock, heat stress, or rooting. In the United States, succinic acid is not always something you find at a regular pharmacy. It is more often sold online, sometimes as a plant supplement or in gardening products. If you use it, follow the label carefully. You want a very weak solution. More is not better. For a home rooting soak, the solution should be mild. If you are using tablets or powder, dissolve only the recommended small amount in water. If you are not sure about the strength, use less, not more. Now let's put the rooting soak together. Start with about 6 cups of clean water at room temperature. Add 1 teaspoon of raw honey and stir until it dissolves. Add about half a cup of willow water. Then add your very mild succinic acid solution if you are using it. The result may look slightly cloudy and may have a faint, sweet smell. That is fine. But remember, the solution is only half the story. The way you prepare the cutting matters just as much. One of the biggest mistakes people make is using dull kitchen scissors or an old pair of pruners. A dull tool does not make a clean cut. It crushes the stem. It damages the tiny channels that move water through the plant. And when those channels are crushed, the cutting has a much harder time taking in moisture. Use a clean, sharp blade. A fresh utility knife, a sharp grafting knife, or clean bypass pruners can work well. Wipe the blade with rubbing alcohol before you start. Make the bottom cut at a 45-degree angle. This gives the stem more surface area to absorb moisture and creates more space where new roots can form. Now, here is the small detail that makes a big difference. On the lower part of the cutting, just above the cut, make a few shallow vertical scratches about ½ an inch long. You are not trying to carve deep into the wood. You are only lightly scraping the outer skin. Why do this? Roots often form from the living layer just under the bark. By making these tiny surface wounds, you encourage the plant to start healing in those spots. And healing tissue is exactly where roots like to begin. As soon as the cutting is ready, place it into the rooting soak. Do not leave the fresh cut sitting in the air for a long time. The end can dry out and seal over. Put only the bottom 1 to 2 inches of the stem into the liquid. Do not drown the whole cutting. The stem still needs air. Now look at the leaves. If there are a lot of leaves on the cutting, remove most of them. Keep only 1 or 2 small leaves at the top. If the leaves are large, cut them in half. This may feel harsh, but it is important. Leaves lose moisture. A cutting has no roots yet, so it cannot replace that moisture. If you leave too many leaves, the cutting can dry out before it ever has a chance to root. Now, place the jar in a warm, bright spot with indirect light. Do not put it in direct sun. A sunny windowsill can heat the water quickly, especially in the south, the southwest, or during summer. Warm water plus plant tissue plus sugar can turn into a bacteria factory. Aim for bright shade or soft indoor light. A room temperature around 72 to 76 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal for many common cuttings. Climate matters here. If you live in Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, or another dry climate, your biggest challenge is usually low humidity. Cuttings can dry out fast. If you live in Florida, Louisiana, or along the Gulf Coast, humidity is high, but fungus can become a bigger problem. If you are in the Pacific Northwest, the air may be moist, but cooler temperatures can slow rooting. And if you are propagating indoors during winter in places like the Midwest or Northeast, heated indoor air can be extremely dry. So adjust the setup to your climate. Let the cuttings sit in the rooting soak for about 6 hours. This is a treatment, not a permanent home. During that time, the honey helps protect the cut, the willow water supports rooting, and the mild plant booster helps the cutting recover from stress. After about 6 hours, move the cuttings into clean water. For this next step, use boiled and cooled water, filtered water, or spring water. Add a small piece of activated charcoal if you have it. Activated charcoal helps keep the water cleaner by absorbing impurities. Some gardeners also add a couple of drops of 3% hydrogen peroxide to a glass of water. This can help add oxygen and discourage rot. Keep it very mild. A few drops is plenty. Now we need to create the right microclimate. Imagine being that cutting. You have leaves, but no roots. You are losing moisture, but you cannot drink properly yet. If the air around you is dry, you are in trouble. That is why a humidity dome helps so much. You can cover the cutting with a clear plastic cup, a cut plastic bottle, a glass jar, or place the whole container inside a clear storage bin. You are creating a small greenhouse. Inside that little space, humidity stays high, and the cutting loses much less moisture. But do not seal it forever. A closed container with no airflow can grow mold. Once a day, remove the cover for 10 to 15 minutes. Let fresh air in. If the leaves look dry, mist them lightly with clean water. If you have leftover rooting soak, you can dilute it heavily with water and use it as a very light foliar spray. Make it weak. The leaves do not need a sticky coating. They just need gentle support. Temperature is also important. For many plants, roots form faster when the bottom of the cutting is slightly warmer than the top. This is why seedling heat mats work so well. If you have one, place the jar or container on a low heat mat and keep the root zone around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Do not overheat it. Hot water will damage the cutting and invite rot. Now comes the hardest part. Leave it alone. Do not pull the cutting out every few hours to check for roots. Every time you move it, you risk damaging the tender new tissue that is trying to form. Watch through the glass or clear container. If everything goes well, within a couple of days, you may see small pale bumps near the scratched area. That is callus tissue. It is a sign that the plant has started healing and preparing to root. Some fast-rooting plants may show progress in 48 hours. Pothos, coleus, basil, mint, willow, and many soft-stem cuttings can move quickly. Woody plants like roses, hydrangeas, grapes, citrus, and many shrubs may take longer. Some may need a week or more. Conifers can take much longer and are not always beginner-friendly. So do not judge every plant by the same clock. When you finally see small white roots, do not wait too long before potting the cutting. This is another common mistake. People see roots and get excited, then leave the cutting in water until it has a long white beard. It looks impressive, but water roots are fragile. They are soft, thin, and used to a perfect water environment. When you move long water roots into soil, they often break or struggle. The plant can go into shock. The best time to pot up a water-rooted cutting is when the roots are still short, usually about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch long. At that stage, they are flexible and can adapt to soil more easily. Now let's talk about the potting mix. Do not use heavy garden soil from the yard. It is too dense for new roots and may contain pests or disease. A fresh, light mix is much better. You want something airy and well-draining. A good beginner mix is peat moss or cocoa coir, perlite, and a little clean sand. You can also use a high-quality seed starting mix and add extra perlite to make it lighter. The mix should hold moisture, but it should not turn into mud. If you squeeze it in your hand, it should feel damp and loose, not sticky and compacted. Use a small pot or nursery cup with drainage holes. Do not put a tiny cutting into a huge pot. Too much wet soil around tiny roots can stay soggy and cause rot. A small cup, about 4 to 6 ounces, is enough for a new cutting. Make a small hole in the mix. Gently place the cutting in, keeping the little roots as straight as possible. Cover them lightly and press the mix just enough to hold the stem upright. Do not pack it down hard. For the first watering, use clean water. If you saved a very diluted version of the rooting soak, you can use a little of that, but again, keep it weak. After potting, cover the cutting again with a clear cup, jar, plastic bag, or humidity dome. Do not suddenly move it from nearly 100% humidity to dry room air. That shock can make the leaves wilt. Harden it off slowly. On the first day, open the cover for about 30 minutes. On the second day, open it for about an hour. On the third day, leave it open for several hours. If the plant stays firm and the leaves do not collapse, you can gradually remove the cover completely. Once you see new growth, that is a great sign. It usually means the cutting has started adjusting and the roots are beginning to work. This method can be used on many common plants. Roses from a bouquet, pothos, philodendron, coleus, basil, mint, hydrangeas, grapes, figs, and many houseplants can all respond well to careful propagation. Some plants are easy, some are stubborn, and some depend heavily on the season. In much of the United States, soft green cuttings often root best in spring and early summer, when plants are actively growing. Semi-hardwood cuttings from shrubs often do better in late summer. Hardwood cuttings, like grapes or figs, are usually taken during dormancy in late fall or winter. So if one cutting fails, it does not mean you did everything wrong. Timing, plant type, temperature, humidity, and the health of the mother plant all matter. But when you give your cutting clean water, a protected wound, gentle rooting support, high humidity, and the right temperature, your success rate can improve dramatically. That is the real secret. Not luck, not magic. Just understanding what the plant needs at the most vulnerable moment of its life. Try this method the next time you take a cutting. Start with an easy plant if you are new to propagation. Mint, basil, coleus, pothos, or willow are great practice plants. And once you see those first tiny white roots, you will understand why gardeners get hooked on propagation. There is something special about turning one little piece of a plant into a whole new life. I hope every cutting you plant turns into something healthy, strong, and beautiful. I will see you in the next video, and until then, keep growing.